Hello, good morning, and welcome to another exciting time where we talk about business and businesses all around the world. It is Business 360, and my name is Blyden Ukem. In Business 360 today, we'll look at some of the biggest outlines in the world of business. The most notable aspect of it would be global economic standings, expected data releases for this week, and we begin from there. The United States, a key focus, will be on the onset of the earnings seasons featuring major players like Tesla, Bank of America, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, and Netflix. Also, investors will be paying attention to Fed speeches and data including retail sales, building permits, housing starts, existing home sales, and industrial production. Well, the outline of businesses indicates that internationally, inflation rates will be closely monitored in the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, South Africa, and Malaysia. China will grab attention with its third quarter GDP growth rates, retail sales, industrial production, fixed asset investments, unemployment rates, and house price index. Finally, we'll also look at the state of things in the United Kingdom as the UK will release employment rates, retail sales figures. Germany will share the zoo economic sentiment index, and interest rate decisions will be made in South Korea and Indonesia. Interest rates, inflation, and private sector performance data across Africa would be out this week. Still on the foreign scene, Australia Internet Safety Watchdog has slapped a $610,500 Australian dollar, an equivalent of $386,000, a fine on Elon Musk's X for failing to cooperate with a probe into anti-child abuse practices. It comes after Mr. Musk had, in a post last November, said that removing child exploitation is a priority on X. The E-Safety Commission criticized the firm's, in quotes, empty talk on the issue. X, formerly known as Twitter, has seen a continuous revenue decline since Mr. Musk bought it for $44 billion last year. Still on business around the world. Businesses are closed in Palestine amid the crisis with Israel. Palestinians in the besieged coastal enclave of Gaza struggled to find food, water, and safety on Sunday, ahead of an expected Israeli ground offensive in the war sparked by Hamas' deadly attack. Let's find out more regarding the situation.
وضع مأساوي يعني أنا عندي في البيت 7 عائلات ومشرد.
It's a concern in Palestine at the moment. The ICU rooms are packed full of wounded patients, mostly children, in Gaza's second largest hospital. Hundreds of the severely wounded arrived at the hospital in the last 8 days, and many risked death, as fuel is expected to run out by today. A consultant in NASA Hospital's critical care complex, Dr. Mohammed Kwendale, has warned that fuel would run out in the hospital. Let's find out more.
face actually a catastrophic situation. I'm talking from one of the ICU extension, which is fully packed with injured people. Most of them are children. They are beyond 3 years old. Actually, for the last 8 days, we are receiving hundreds of severely wounded patients. They are arriving hospital post like blast injury, explosive injury. They came with a severe, complicated injuries in their body, and they need like complex medical center to deal with them. The difference in this escalation that we don't have any medical aid coming.
Meanwhile, U.S. and other foreign passport holders in Gaza have gathered at a border crossing, hoping to enter Egypt. This was as a result of a report that the exit from the enclave could be facilitated by international assistance, and it's quite concerning everyone gathering and hopeful for a change in this. Furthermore, in Africa, let's look at what the standings would be. But before talking about the African businesses and scenarios, European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde said officials are gauging the impact of prime moves that are still feeding through and will raise interest rates again if they have to. Lagarde said, "Our aim," and I quote, "our mission is to return inflation to 2% medium term, and we will." And it is happening as we speak during a panel discussion in the Moroccan city of Marrakesh. Let's find out more.
Still in, we've seen the vulnerability of supply chains. And that vulnerability has led to some conclusions that we think we need.
I would like to pick up on where Gita was and to tell you how we are seeing the situation now. And I put really the emphasis of now after the 3 mega crises that we have gone through in the last 3 years and the most recent developments that we haven't seen the end of, and which will have, in addition to the human toll and the horrible developments that will take place, that will have economic consequences. And it feels very much like, and I want to point to my notes because I listed them and I want to mention them for you, what I would call the multiple moving parts. And we're just not yet too sure where the chips will come down. And I would list in my moving parts the unwinding of large previous shocks. And Ngozi has alluded to some. There are multiple previous shocks, from the disruption to the supply bottlenecks, to the immense volatility of energy prices.
On the panel, the World Trade Organization's Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala also spoke at the IMF annual meeting in Marrakesh, Morocco. Let's find out more.
Still in, we've seen the vulnerability of supply chains. And that vulnerability has led to some conclusions that we think we need to think through again. Some people have concluded that supply chains are so vulnerable, we need to reshore everything to ourselves, or we need to produce with friends or those who have similar politics as we do. And yes, some of that will happen. They've concluded that trade is the problem. But what we want to say at the WTO, our analysis has shown that the vulnerabilities come from over-concentration in some supply chains and over-concentration of production in some geographies. If that is the root of the problem, then to build resilience, we need, yes, to deconcentrate and diversify those supply chains. And we are arguing that a good way to do it is not just to do it with your friends or those who are like you, but to spread your wings, because we also have something called climate change. And if you cluster too many things, you don't know what phenomenon is going to happen. So why don't we look at developing economies that have the right business environment, and I insist on that, and see if we can diversify some supply chains there. So we build resilience. Some of these have been left out during the first wave of globalization. So we can build resilience whilst being inclusive. And we're calling that
in Africa. The long-awaited direct flights from Uganda Airlines to Mumbai have already begun, giving travelers more alternatives in the East Africa-India aviation corridor. Uganda Airline launches direct Mumbai flights. Meanwhile, East African airlines may face heightened competition and potential cost pressures as Uganda Airlines relies on shorter flight duration to attract point-to-point passengers. Still in Africa, the World Bank is currently engaged in discussions regarding a possible $1 billion loan aimed at supporting South Africa's efforts to revamp its energy sector. The country is struggling with severe power shortages that has significantly impacted its economy over time. The proposed World Bank loan would not only assist South Africa in transitioning away from coal, but also ensure a just transition. Marinelli, the World Bank's director of South Africa, confirmed that a loan intended for the government itself rather than the state's utility Eskom is currently under discussion. In 2022, the country witnessed more than 200 days of power cuts, which was already considered the worst year for blackouts in the history of South Africa. Still in Africa, Johan Rupert, the wealthiest individual in South Africa and the second richest person in Africa, has experienced a decline in his net worth over the last 90 days. On July 14, 2023, the 73-year-old business magnate had a net worth of $14.4 billion. However, his wealth has decreased significantly, now amounting to $10.7 billion, representing a notable 25.6% reduction. This shift in Rupert's wealth is closely tied to the ongoing uncertainty surrounding the performance of the luxury goods industry. The primary driving force behind this dramatic turn of events is the decrease in the market value of its 10.18% stake in Richemont, the renowned Swiss luxury conglomerate celebrated for its iconic brands including Cartier, Montblanc, and Van Cleef & Arpels. Sylvain Judex, the Chief Executive Officer of Dangote Sugar Refinery, and Newman, has announced the company's ambitious goal of achieving an annual production of 1.5 million metric tons of sugar propelled by the recent and vigorous expansion initiatives. The company has set a goal of achieving a workforce of 8,000 employees, coinciding with the projected daily crushing of 17,000 tons of sugarcane at the refinery. And Dangote Sugar Refinery plc is currently the largest producer of sugar in Nigeria and Africa. Still in Nigeria, the International Monetary Fund (IMF) warns of rising debt servicing costs in Nigeria. According to the IMF, Nigeria's overall public debt of 87.3 trillion naira, an equivalent of $113.4 billion, is not sustainable and fails to present any immediate cause of concern to the country's economy. Nigeria struggles to generate significant tax revenue, they say. The IMF said holistic reforms are needed for economic stability in Nigeria. Meanwhile, the latest report from the Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria, IXPN, has said that the country will save at least $40 million annually if all its internet content is hosted locally. The Chief Executive Officer of IXPN, Mohammed Rutman, disclosed this in a statement. The development comes as the exchange point achieved a milestone of 500 gigabytes per second of internet traffic as local hosting increased. The 500 gigabyte per second traffic was an improvement from 300 gigabyte per second recorded last year. Rutman attributed the milestone to including several global and local content providers exchanging traffic locally via the exchange points. Still on business in Nigeria, telecommunication firms have issued fresh threats to withdraw unstructured supplementary service data USSD service if banks do not pay that 120 billion naira debt owed to them. According to the telcos, the issue has dragged on for too long and a court resolution might be needed since the banks do not seem to be ready to clear the debts. The Chairman Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria, Benga Adebayo, disclosed this over the weekend. This new revelation is coming despite a recent resolution by the telcos and banks to settle the USSD issue that has been lingering for about 4 years. He said, and I quote, "I think it is best to withdraw the services." We'll go on a quick break. When we return, Business 360 continue, and we'll look at economic data and statistics all around the world. Don't go anywhere.
How powerful is Hamas, the Palestinian group that attacked Israel on October 7th, massacring hundreds of civilians and kidnapping many others? Hamas is an Islamist organization and political party that runs the Gaza Strip, home to 2 million Palestinians. It was founded in 1987 during the first Palestinian uprising against Israel's occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. Its name is short for Islamic Resistance Movement in Arabic. Its founding charter called for the destruction of the State of Israel and the killing of Jews. Since its formation, Hamas has carried out suicide bombings, rocket attacks, and kidnappings, which led some countries to designate the group as a terrorist organization. In 2006, it won a majority of seats in the Palestinian elections. A year later, after a brief civil war, Hamas took full control of Gaza, and no more elections were held. Israel and Egypt placed a blockade on the Strip, strangling its economy and confining its people. Despite the blockade, Hamas has built up its military capacity, from smuggled support from allies including Iran.